What up, y'all? Happy, what is it, Wednesday? Happy Wednesday. Well, we're going to call it NXT Wednesday. We're talking champions and Trick Williams coming up next.
Out on bail, first out of jail, California dreaming. As soon as I step on the scene, I'm hearing Hoochie screaming, feeding for money and alcohol.
Thanks for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling network on the planet.
What up, y'all? Happy Wednesday. Happy NXT Wednesday. We are doing all things NXT this early morning in California. But I'm not alone. The professor is in the building. What's good, Professor?
Hey, how are you, TK?
I'm good. I mean, I wanna see if Trick is gonna invite me to the cookout too. I have to double check that one.
I'm just saying. I mean, invites are out there flying around, and he's not
out there.
Yeah, he doesn't apparently have a legendary invite out there, so maybe there's one ready for you.
Maybe. Do you think that I'm sure he follows social media, but not as closely. But do you think that he realizes that he's like a meme in the Black wrestling community?
Which he?
Cody.
Yes. Somebody actually brought it up to him in an interview, and they asked him about that, and they started showing him some of the memes, and he just said that he was honored to be accepted in the community in the way that he has. I think the memes themselves have taken on a life of their own based on where they are now versus the intent with which they were originally created. So it's again kind of one of those things where if you get far enough away from something can mean something completely different than what it was intended. And I think that's hilarious. Hence a very public invite to the cookout, which I thought was just hilarious and just reminds me how in touch NXT is with the culture. It's incredible.
I mean, now they should double down and actually have a cookout, an NXT cookout with,
and they might.
They
totally might. It's funny, and we'll get into it, and obviously we're referring to Cody Rhodes' appearance last night on NXT, but it's a good place probably to kick off our recap of last night's show, the follow-up to a historic Battleground PLE, and it started with the announcement or the introduction of our brand new NXT Women's North American Champion, Lani Jordan, who it's really wild watching her maturation at this point. I think for me, prior to last week's episode of NXT, where they had the championship summit, where she first kind of hit this, nobody can do it like Lani line that everybody kind of grabbed. I think that's where I really first started to see her as a potential contender. And then, of course, she won the championship Sunday night, and she kicks off this episode of NXT, offering challenges and the like, and saying, hey, you know what? She doesn't really have a legacy to live up to because she's the one creating the legacy with this championship, which I think is important. And I guess we can start by asking, and it's, I guess, early to make this determination, but based on what you're seeing in terms of the trajectory of Lani Jordan, what do you think her legacy will ultimately end up being as the first ever women's North American champion?
I mean, I think this iteration of NXT, in particular the women, obviously, because Women's Wrestling Talk, is, we have like the different phases, the bookmark phases. And I feel like this iteration, especially where it's heavy on the pipeline from college athletics to this. It's going to be almost like when we talk about the 4 Horsewomen, which you guys did. I still need to. Y'all did so many shows, so I want to say thank you for that. but you still, like, when you reference them, it was a time. It's a bookmark, and I think that
Yes.
this is going to be a bookmark as well. It's going to represent the new era. Like, I was reading something. I was reading something of somebody's recently, and they were referencing wrestling and WWE, and they still were talking about, Vince McMahon. And it's nothing huge, but it's one of those things where that's an old era now. Like, we're
Yeah. Yeah.
now what? Like, are we like a year? Is a year? It feels like a year.
Well, it depends on when you start counting. Like he being Triple H officially took over creative in July of 2022, which seems like
Mhm.
a whole, and so we're almost at 2 years on that. But they didn't deem this the Triple H era until this past WrestleMania.
Yeah.
uh,
So
Out of the company. So yeah.
yeah. So, like, I guess NXT wise, like a year and some change since he took it back, maybe a little bit longer. But this version where now, because the good thing we're going to see too is we're going to see. I believe we're going to see, like, how we're seeing Shayna Baszler and Natalia and other main roster folks kind of, and Cody Rhodes kind of weave in and out of NXT, and we're seeing NXT superstars go onto the main roster and maintain that storyline. That's where it's going to be really great, because now we can see that full progression. So as far as her legacy, like, you can't take away the first, never.
Right.
Like,
Right.
in anything, you take that sentence
Mhm.
as you will. Like, you can't. So
This early in the morning? Good Lord.
we're starting early. You can't take away the first, no matter how hard you try. If you try to scrub it from the record, there's always the first. Even if you do steroids, you remember the person who did the steroids, who got their record
What?
got let go. So yes, it's you don't remember. You always remember the first. I'm just saying. So congratulations to Kalani.
I am, yeah, okay. I got to get myself back together, because we went from the first to steroids, and then back to Kaylani. All right,
Yeah,
this is going to
there
be a
it is.
fun show. It's going to be a fun show. But to that point about eras, I definitely think we are now starting to see what the NIL era is doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that, of course, whether it is Kaylani Jordan as the first women's North American champion, if it's Obafemi as the current North American champion, you can even make the argument about Trick Williams coming straight out of college in terms of football and those kinds of things. So there are this era definitely looks like it'll be the era of the NIL recruit, which gets interesting because this ensures that what WWE is doing is not just creating new stars within the WWE ethos, but new wrestling stars, period. People who
Mm-hmm.
did not go on the indies, people who do not have a track record in some other promotion. All they know is WWE. And so this
Which is a
actually
good
gets
and bad thing.
well, and that again, it just depends on where it is they will ultimately go.
Mm-hmm.
Good in one sense, because they'll always be television ready wherever
Mm-hmm.
they go. It could prove to be challenging just based on what you might be accustomed to in the WWE world that you might not get in any other locker room. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll see. Again, TK working from the end to the beginning. But we'll see, because they could end up, and this is the other thing, and we won't stay too long on this, but the NIL era is interesting because these are also people who could say in this modern wrestling world, I'm going to do this for 10 years and I'm done.
Right.
As
Mm-hmm.
opposed to generations before, where once a wrestler, always a wrestler. That's all I'll ever do. And they stay in the business 40 or 50 years.
Yeah.
So we will certainly see what all of this turns into. But Kaylani Jordan, starting things off, she was interrupted by Jada Parker, and Jada Parker ends up getting beat down by Mi Chin, leading to our first match of the night, Mi Chin versus Kaylani Jordan. Michin versus Jada Parker. I'm sorry, Mayor. And a wild match for sure that ultimately sees the OC, aka the Good Brothers, getting involved, which results in a victory for Michin and an interesting moment backstage. But your thoughts on this match to open up the show?
I feel like Michin has, I mean, you know her from the indie scene, and you see her being woven in and out of WWE. I want to see her win. I guess that's what like my whole thought process is. Like, I obviously she has a lot to offer NXT, like newer folks in the business, but I feel like, you know, there has to be, it seems like she's more, I don't want to say enhancement, but it's kind of like, you know, she got the win. She's gonna go after Kalani Jordan, but I don't think she's gonna get the belt. And that's where it's kind of like, on one hand, I don't want Kalani to drop it on the first go round. However, I feel like Michin has put in the work like decades. So it's kind of a toss up, although it's going to be a good match no matter what. But back to her and Jada, great match. I love that the Good Brothers did get involved. I believe it's kind of Jada Parker to Kalani Jordan. The one thing you prove is that you can scurry up the ladder like that. Yeah. The one-liners.
Jada's got bars, man.
Beautiful. Yeah. But yeah, it's just kind of one of those things where it's gonna, you can guarantee that it's gonna be a great match. But you know, here's me, I'm always worrying about the future. Like, what does that look like? Michin definitely does deserve it, but like Kalani just got it. And so her being the first, I don't want her to drop it at the first go around. You know what I'm saying? But also, then what happens to Michin if she loses? Like,
well, here's the thing, and I remember an interview a while back that Michin, aka Mia Yim, did, where she said she's not really concerned about being a champion. She's just glad to be there. She's glad to be able to work, and whatever her role is, she's willing to play. And this gets into something in a conversation I had on another show yesterday, which just is, and we were talking about Ricochet. You know, everyone's definition of success is different.
Right.
And because their definition of success is different, you know, not everybody aspires to being a champion per se, even though that's what we might want for some of them. And a great example of this, if we step outside of the wrestling world and we step into, you know, people's everyday lives, not everybody goes to work with the desire to become the supervisor, the manager, the operations manager, or the CEO. Some people literally want to just come into work, do their job, get a really good paycheck, and go home. And I think what many of us have to become good with is there are a lot of people that we want to see as champions that don't want to be supervisors at their job. They just don't.
True.
And just like we don't seem to get mad at our fellow coworkers who say, "Oh no, listen, I like leaving work at work and home being home and not taking work at home." Hey, if you are a WWE superstar that does not become a champion, you know, and you're able to get in there, have good matches, and go home and not have to worry about doing extra press or doing extra this, that, or the other, whatever the extra might be, at the level that a champion has to do it, that could be very interesting to you. So for me, Chin, I don't, you know, having already been on record saying that she doesn't have to be a champion, she's just glad to be there. She's not going to be hurt whether she wins the NXT Women's Championship or the North American Championship next week or not. You know, I don't think it's going to be as big of an issue for her. And for most of the main roster stars that are coming to NXT, they're not necessarily coming to win championships. They're either coming to revive their career or assist the people in NXT.
I agree with you in all that. However, and you know, I'm not saying that she wasn't giving us the truth. However, that's a really humble answer. Like, You will like there's three schools of thoughts where people talk about championships, right? You have the person who's like, I deserve the championship. I've been in the game. I'm the best in the biz, blah, 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 blah. And then you have the humble one where it's just like, I'm here. I'm doing, I'm here to offer support. I'm a veteran XYZ. And they're not going to say that. And then you have the people who like just don't deserve it. Like they just, they're always going to be in that. They're always going to be a supporting player. They're always going to be on the bench type thing. When you need them, you call them, but that title picture is nowhere in sight. So I'm not questioning what she said in the interview because one, she doesn't do too many interviews. Trust me. However, I think sometimes people, myself included, rather go the humble side versus appearing like, because also too, when you say stuff like that as a woman of color, it's totally different than somebody else. And we won't get into that whole thing. You can look it up, check out Amanda Seales. She talks about it. So I feel like with that, you just, you kind of almost have to be humble in some spaces where I'm like the only one, or I am, kind of in that place where I can possibly get a upper management position. I have to play the humble card. So in her saying that, because imagine she says, no, I'm the baddest, she might be viewed differently and she might not be getting as many opportunities as she's getting now.
Because, you mean like a Mercedes Moné?
Well, I mean, there's certain things there's certain things about Mercedes that are happening behind the scenes that, we'll see what happens when that all plans out. However, I feel like if Michin did say that, I don't think she would be getting as much as she's getting now. I think the humble card is the best play for her, and she's getting more now than she was with her first, because this is her second go around, right? She came, then she left, and she came back. So this is her second go around. But I might be completely wrong. I'm just saying, as a woman of color in these big corporations, and now you're adding television to it, you have to play the game a little bit differently. It's a woman of color. You're talking about ageism. You're talking about a lot of different things. So, personally, I want her to win, just not yet, or something else. But if she doesn't want to win in her heart of hearts, then, I guess, do you? Sure, WWE, give her what she wants.
Oh my.
It's early. I had a Celsius and I worked out this morning.
I see. We've got a lot of places in less than 20 minutes. And so from there we end up in a 6-man tag that sees Wesley teaming with the No Catch Republic, not to be confused with the No Quarter Catch crew. Lots of catching happening here. Going on against Gallus, and this was a result of what happened toward the end of Battleground, where Wesley was attacked by Gallus, turned into a 6-man tag that I thought was strongly entertaining. Lots of references, of course, to the NXT UK days and the battles that would happen between Tyler Bate, Pete Dunne, and Gallus. And what a wild match this was, which ends with a big win for Gallus and Wesley taking his first pin since returning to NXT from injury. Your thoughts on this match?
Woo, Wesley, man, like whoever his doctor was, and obviously the training he put in, like you can't even tell that he was injured. Like the jump from the rope, the top of the rope. It's one of those things. I think it just in general, because being a former athlete, I stayed on the ground. I wasn't a bouncer. Like I wasn't a gymnast or anything. Like I was a runner. It's so fantastic to see these athletes do these amazing things, but it's also scary because, one wrong move, it's a wrap for your body.
Right.
So it's kind of one of those things, but I mean, it's amazing that this I think we talked about this when I was last on the show a couple weeks ago. This crop of NXT folks, and I think just in general, the up and comers coming into the wrestling industry, they have like everything. It's almost like the CrossFit of wrestling. And if you don't know that reference in CrossFit, you have to be able to like run, lift, do gymnastics to an extent, and then they kind of put that all together for a workout, competition, etc. And that's what it feels like for wrestling now. Like, even if you're the big man, you're still doing some flippy type move. Like, you're not just powering. So it's amazing to see the incredible athletics of it. I was kind of sad that Wesley did lose, but I think this is setting up for more of a storyline later on. So
for sure, for sure. Plus, with all of the damage that Gallus has been doing, they have to land a win at some point. One of their first matches back was a couple of weeks ago against the champion Trick Williams and Javon Evans, and Javon and Trick got the win. So at some point, they've got to turn around and get a big win, and I think this was the start of that particular win. I saw Jeffrey mentioning the thought about the Rascals showing up, and I want to reiterate a point that I think I made on WWT Live Monday about this partnership, which we will get into some more, involving NXT and TNA. And that is, I think a lot of us, particularly with the Jordan Grace piece, saw certain things and we kind of saw like TK the end and we were like, let's get to it now. But we're going to all have to be patient a bit to let these things kind of play out in the way that they will. I don't doubt that we'll see the Rascals at some point. The question will be obviously when, and when the right time will be. So we'll talk some more about the TNA partnership, where there is a reference that's made to it a little bit later in the show. All right, so that happened, and from there, I'm gonna. We did Kalani already. This one was interesting. And I feel like we're going out of order a little bit, but it's okay, as we had a Singapore Cane match that took place between Dante Chen and Lexis King. This is a wild one, a very wild one. What were your thoughts on this one?
Man, when Lexis had the cane and he put it, there was two of them. One, he put it on the floor and he bounced Dante's chin off of it.
Yes.
That was like, damn. And then there was another one where I think he put it on the second rope and he like pushed him into the post. Yeah. And again, it makes you really appreciate, for all those people who says wrestling is fake, you still have to, like, it still hits the body. And getting a cane to the body, a kendo stick to the body, is not like, what are we doing here? Who volunteered for this? But it was a brutal match. It was a great match, but it was a brutal match. I'm not one for I wouldn't say I'm not one for pain, but like where there might be some blood involved, I'm not looking. So I kind of looked at it, but I was just like, this is a little too violent for me. But nonetheless, it was really good. What I did really enjoy was Booker's commentary. I really enjoy that. I'm going to take notes because me and Professor are going to make an announcement maybe in like a week or so. But I'm going to take some notes because I think I might do the Booker thing. And once you guys watch this and watch a episode of WWT Live, eventually you'll see what I'm talking about. But I'm for it.
Yeah, you know what? It was a really, really strong match. Certainly, I think one of the most aggressive matches we've seen for Dante Chen, who has kind of come in with a couple of wins. And, with those wins, he was very happy to be here, much like he was on Coming to America. But in this one, we got really violent. And we really got to see, I think, another side of Lexis King, which I thought was really, really necessary. I think Lexis King needed the win on this one, and I think it was important that he did get the win in such a violent match because, again, it really solidified him as being one of those guys that you really, really have to pay attention to. And so it was a strong match. Again, Booker T being who he is. I think it's always fun when you can see Booker's lean towards someone. And he's very pro Lexus King. And so kind of hearing all of that and then really hearing him going, how is that okay for Dante Chen to come and just steal one on him to open the match and things like that. Like, it was just, there's a lot of good chemistry, by the way, and I've said this in multiple places, between Vic Joseph and Booker T. It's really something that I think is super special. And whenever you have great chemistry with a commentary team, that makes all the difference in the world. We see it, on Ring of Honor. We see it on TNA. We're seeing it, on Raw and SmackDown. It's really quite awesome to see how this is happening all the way around with great commentary teams. And they certainly make matches like this even more fun to watch. So a big match there for and a big win for Lexus King. So there's this moment where we see Cody Rhodes, who had announced Sunday night that he was coming to NXT. We didn't quite know why. He comes out, and in here he's talking about a few things. He's interrupted by Trick Williams, and it's kind of a cool moment to see the WWE champion and the NXT champion in the ring together. Of course, this is where we get the line about the cookout. But before we get to the cookout, we find out that Cody Rhodes has come with the authorization to tell Trick Williams who his next opponent will be for the NXT championship. That opponent will be determined next week by a 25-man over-the-top rope battle royal. But perhaps the key line in all of this is that some of the people in this battle royal may be coming from different locker rooms. So let's just start pontificating. What other locker rooms could we be talking about? And who else could end up in this battle royal?
First off, can we just make a note of Trick's outfit?
Okay. I expected something like this, so please have a moment.
I mean, maybe you could talk to this, Professor. I don't know if you've ever worn platform shoes. They're very 70-esque. So I love the whole outfit, the shoes. Okay. I mean, they go with the outfit, but
no, I'm trying to figure out why you think I've worn platform shoes before.
No, I'm just saying if you have.
Oh, no,
like, no. Feel as a guy because you guys don't wear heels all the time because they're kind of like like my boots.
I hate to equate heels because I just, the closest thing I've worn, Timberlands kind of have a different heel to them, but there are boots that were similar, known as Durangos. That might be the closest thing that I've had to a heel of some sort, but I've never worn platform shoes. So
okay. Well, great outfit nonetheless. It accents and it opens up, we see everything and accents everything. So kudos to that. But I feel like every time, that's the goal. I mean, the open.
That's the goal. Where is said when I need him? Oh my Lord.
The arms are out. I mean, look, kudos to the outfit choice. It's very appropriate for the head of the cookout. So, there's all that. As far as it kind of feels like, I want to say an open challenge to the main roster, but I feel like we're going to get some folks who haven't been used or utilized. Jeffrey's like, what is going on? Haven't been utilized on the main roster. I'm really, even though NXT is still kind of considered developmental, it's not. You know what I'm saying? It's just more seasoned folks on the main roster and folks who are just starting out. But the folks who are just starting out, they're already, by the time they get to NXT, the show, they're there. They've kind of hit the marks. So I mean, I don't know. It's I can't think of anybody off the top of my head who would be great. I mean, I feel like maybe Montez
Okay.
coming back, because there was a little bit of rumbling of him doing like a singles thing,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe he's coming back to kind of show, because I feel like what he's doing now in the main roster, I don't necessarily know he's making it work. The Street Profits, both of them, but I don't know if they're necessarily happy with it. So maybe Montez, that would be a good one. Carmelo dabbling back, like you thought you were got rid of me, almost like a Batman Joker type thing. Like you thought you killed me, but I'm still here. That type of thing. That type of thing. So yeah, I don't know. It's. I mean, Cody. I mean, why can't Cody go for 2? I mean, I hope he does it, but
Wow.
it's like you invited me to the cookout, and now I'm gonna take your belt. Like, F that cookout. I want everything type thing.
Wow.
I don't know. It's possible. LA Knight, Jeffrey saying LA Knight.
Mm-hmm. There's a couple of things. I think that the different locker rooms, I mean, certainly there could be some Raw or SmackDown. Well, before I get to that, what I really wanted to say was NXT is absolutely no longer developmental. I think the 2.0 phase was developmental. I think the developmental in NXT is level up at this point, where you really do get to see those who are in true developmental work things out on level up. And then once they are ready from level up, that's when they get the NXT debut. Much like, the NXT debut happens on Raw or SmackDown. So there's that. But I definitely think the other locker rooms we're talking about are TNA. I definitely think we're going to see at least 2, maybe even 3 people from TNA come through amid that 25 men in that battle royal. And this is one of the reasons why NXT is not developmental. If you're going to establish a relationship with another brand and that brand is TNA, then NXT can't be developmental. If they are, then you're calling TNA developmental, and we know better than that. So I think we are going to see, 2 or 3 names from TNA. And I say only 2 or 3 because, you don't want to bring half the TNA roster over at this point. There needs to, if you only have 2 or 3, then that's a better chance of seeing somebody from TNA potentially win this thing. And I mean, if you think about the winner of this is going to Heat Wave to battle Trick Williams for the NXT championship. Again, we're talking pay-per-view, and not just are we talking pay-per-view, but we're talking 2 weeks before Slammiversary for TNA. So again, these things are close. They're interwoven, much like we've got a TNA pay-per-view happening this Friday where Jordynne Grace is doing an open challenge for her Knockouts championship. I think we're going to start seeing these sprinklings of things happening, between now and then. And that's going to be a lot of fun. And instead of just, opening up the entire dam and letting all the water through, we're going to get kind of drips and drips and drips.
Right.
And then we go, oh, snap, this is really happening. And I think that's going to be a lot of fun. So that was a big announcement coming from Cody Rhodes. And we'll see. Now, there's another interesting Cody Rhodes moment that happens. Now, Jeffrey's talking about people who could show up. And he mentioned Joe Hendry, Matt Cardona, and Josh Alexander. There's actually a very funny Twitter post that Jordynne Grace did earlier yesterday. And it was Joe Hendry, who was doing an announcement about upcoming TNA shows. And Jordynne Grace retweets it and says, Well, geez, Joe, you could hide the fact that you're debuting on NXT soon. I mean, you've got Orlando palm trees in the background, um, which I found to be funny. And I figured she wasn't gonna give it away quite like that. But
Right.
there was a reference to Joe Hendry made last night on NXT, and I'm like, I pay attention to everything right now. It was someone, I think it was, gosh, was it Jada mentioning Me Chin perhaps or something?
Mhm.
And Me Chin showed up, and the commentator said, "Say her name and she'll appear." And that's
Oh,
so Joe Hendry, you know? So, and that reference was also made Monday night as well on Raw. So I think we're in a space where small hints are being given, some really cool things are happening. I would not be surprised to see Joe Hendry show up next Tuesday. Josh Alexander has been vocal about it.
what
Lord,
about
if they
Moose
put
though?
so let's talk about Moose, because I just read an interview from Moose where he was talking about this, and he was saying that if he heads over to WWE, it has to be Raw or SmackDown, because
I I, I agree with that.
he feels like there's nobody on the NXT roster who could battle him. And I'm just like,
No, no,
I don't agree with that.
not now. When was that interview done?
No, it was recently done. This is very
Ah,
recent. Now,
huh. Yeah, I
if
don't.
this was during the 2.0 era, okay, I get it. But right now, I mean, any of
Yeah.
those Gallus boys could take him on. Wes Lee, my God, Obafemi, like, stop
Yes,
playing.
him and Obafemi would be crazy.
That'd be nuts.
Yeah.
So if I'm Moose right now, yeah, yeah, and yeah, so that'll be interesting. So I'm very intrigued to see who will show up. We obviously have 7 days to kind of start guessing in terms of who will show up. I also hope that since this is a battle royal, that they got to do it somewhat almost Royal Rumble style if we're going to have these surprises show up, because we need entries happening. They just can't all appear in the ring at the same time. But we'll see. We'll see. So Moose.
Moose
All
is
right.
great.
We saw the return of Eddie Thorpe last night. He had been injured for a little bit, but he is back, and he took on Tavion Heights. Tavion Heights has been a staple for quite a while on Level Up. We also got to see him during the breakout tournament, the men's breakout tournament earlier. Was it last year? That was last year. Yeah, what were your thoughts on the return of Eddie Thorpe?
I loved it. Representation matters. And I
Yes.
can't wait until we can not say that anymore. And I know some people are annoyed that people like me say it, but I also
Moose
can't
is one of
wait
those
to not.
people, by the way.
Oh, I also can't wait to not say it, and
Mhm.
everything is just like, oh, so and not the fake kind, the one where
Right.
people who watch the product don't give into just the general stereotypes.
Mhm.
When that day comes, it's going to be an amazing thing.
Yeah.
But it was a great match, and it's set up to a story that I'm interested to seeing how that pans out. For you guys who
Mhm.
don't know, Professor and I do an ROH TNA show Friday mornings, and one of the great things, and also like the double-edged sword, is that the stories are slow cooking, which is great, and the stories are slow cooking, which is not great. Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
I think NXT has a sweet spot when they do tell the stories, and I'm
Yeah.
really, curious to see what this storyline is gonna, how this is gonna play out.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned that similarity between TNA, Ring of Honor, NXT, and I think one of the differences, and perhaps one of the reasons why NXT and TNA tell their stories differently than Ring of Honor, is both of those brands also have larger payoff events happening more regularly.
Hmm.
So there's that combination. Plus, they're also willing to put marquee matches on their regular weekly television program, Whereas on the Ring of Honor side of things, you're usually waiting once a quarter for a pay-per-view / premium live event. And their weekly show doesn't always feature marquee matches. So they end up it's almost like they put these stories on the lowest light possible. You don't want to put it on too hot of a fire because it's going to burn rapidly. But there's that middle spot. If you're on the range of 1 to 6 on your dial there, put it on about a 3. You give it a chance to simmer a bit. It starts to bubble at just the right time. And to your point, NXT has done a really, really good job of doing that with their stories specifically. And this was part of that match, which I thought was a really, really good match. So okay, that's toward the end. I'll come back to that. One of the other things that happened here was a main event match, which I thought this was really neat that this ended up being the main event. Javon Evans and Sean Spears. This is a result of, an altercation that happened last week where we really started to see the super tough side of Javon Evans standing up for fellow members of the roster against what Sean Spears was trying to do. And so, again, this is like the second or third main event that Javon Evans has been in the last 3 to 4 weeks. He was in the main event a couple of weeks ago where he and Trick took on Gallus, and that was the week that Sexy Red was on. So that was about 2 weeks ago or so. So Javon Evans has really worked his way up the card very, very fast. He and Sean Spears had some kind of match. And
he got bouncy.
He got very bouncy. What were your thoughts on this match and this serving as the main event?
He got very bouncy, like even more bouncier than Wes, which I didn't think at a certain point was even possible. And the fact that it's kind of, would you consider Ricochet of Lucha bouncy, the stuff that he did too? Or was it just
I definitely think Prince Puma in Lucha was bouncy, but I definitely think that Javon Evans is on a completely different level. And part of that too is because of his frame.
Yeah,
right?
he's definitely
when you are lanky and tall like he is, that flight hits differently as opposed to most of the luchadors we're accustomed to, which are built similarly. They're relatively short, kind of that frame of a Rey Mysterio or a Ricochet, so you expect that kind of activity. You don't expect it from someone taller or from someone heavier. In this case, Javon Evans is the taller, lankier type.
Yeah. It was a great match, a lot of back and forth. And like I've said, for those who follow me, I love when I don't know what the outcome will be. And that's what this match was. It's like, okay, well, where is this going to play out? There was a through line as far as a story to it, but how is this going to play out? Who's going to benefit more from this win? And where did they go from there? But definitely it was a great match. We'll come back on the other side because I wanted to see if you saw, I guess it was like somebody who rushed Vic Joseph. Did you see that?
Yes. So let's talk about this. We started getting some hints at this last week on NXT when Booker T and Vic came back from commercial, and when they came back from commercial, they looked a bit disheveled, and they kept saying, "I hope the young man's all right," but we never got a reference in terms of who it was. And so it would then come out on the socials. There was a fan video that showed Brooks Jensen kind of breaking into things and having a lot to say at the commentary desk. And then security came and ushered him out. Now, if you've been following Brooks Jensen on the socials, he has been very vocal about his issues with WWE. He said at one point that WWE kind of took his voice away, took his Twitter account away. And so basically he's even been going on saying that you cannot silence me. Like, it's some of the wildest stuff ever. So as we saw coming back from a break last night, you saw this figure kind of come just the hand and grab
Right.
Vic Joseph. That was Brooks Jensen. And
Oh,
so
okay, go on.
yeah, it's getting kind of wild. It's so wild right now that people can't tell, is this story or is this not? Because Brooks Jensen showed up at an indie show. Now, now we know AEW and, you know, TNA, they allow their talents to show up at indie shows and wrestle, you know, and be in front of the camera. They WWE contracted talent usually is not allowed
They
to
have to
do
ask
that.
permission. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to get permission for that. And certainly not to show up at a random indie show. Reality of wrestling, I don't count it because it's Booker T and the connections are obvious, you know. But you don't see them showing up to Defy. You don't see them showing up to Southern Honor or some of these other places. So for him to show up at a random event like this over the weekend is crazy. And he showed up last night. So everybody's trying to figure out what's happening with him. And if you follow him on the socials, you see he is unhinged. And this is obviously leading to something. And
I mean,
again,
he's still on WWE's site. So, because, you know, if it was real,
well, and that's the other interesting thing in terms of taking him off. That would be if he was like no longer signed to the company. Doesn't necessarily mean he's not in some degree of trouble with them and they're just not using him. So it's going to be interesting to see how all of this plays out. But it's being done in a very, very smart way.
Yeah.
And I really
like when Booker said where's the security, I was like, yeah, where is this? How did because I thought it was like, you know how they do in the football games, you have a stormer. I was like, how did somebody really manage to? And then also, I mean, I can't speak to Vic as far as I'm assuming, like, you know, he works out. I don't know, but Booker T, I feel like if you get on his wrong side, it's a wrap. So like, I feel like if it happened in real life, now I'm kind of thinking back, Booker would have did.
But something. here's the tough part though, and I've thought this through. When you have things happen in real time, it often first takes time to process what's actually happening before you just bounce right into action. Couple that with they're on a live TV shot. So kind of the question is, do you, because we've seen this happen before where fans show up, interrupt things, and nobody knows what's happening. I think about what happened a couple of years ago with Seth Rollins when he was on Monday Night Raw and he's leaving the ring and some fan circles around and spears him and nobody knows what's happening. And it takes them a minute before they realize, oh no, this is not supposed to happen, you know? And so having been involved in a couple of things, I know when you don't know what's going to happen, it takes you a minute before you realize, is this supposed to happen? Is this not supposed to happen? How am I supposed to be reacting? Do I want to bring more attention to this or not? And there's that. And I think it's easy when you're sitting on the other side of the camera to say, well, they should do this and they should do that and they should do the other. I just know, having been in certain situations, sometimes our reflexes don't move that fast because we're still processing, what am I really seeing and what's really happening? And by the time you get ready to react sometimes, you know, and that runs for security too. I don't know that the security people necessarily know all of the folks that are, like, I think about, you know, they showed the footage of from Vegas of Oro Mensah after the PLE jumping in the ring, you know, and hitting, and the security hit fast because it was just like, okay, this is over. Why is there somebody in street clothes in the ring? You know, it's much easier than people realize. And I don't want to give anybody an idea. Don't do it. but it's much easier than people realize to jump the guardrail and get to somebody, because there aren't enough security people if you do it in the right place, where it's going to
Right.
take a minute before they do it. So this is being done in a masterful way. And Brooks Jensen, who has spent a lot of time in the PC, he knows his way in, he knows his way out. I imagine his fob must still work if he's still an employee of the company.
Well, that's the thing. So it has it has to, because even if you're not, so it has to be a work. It has to be, because even if you are still part of the company but you're being reprimanded, there's certain things that are going to be taken away from you. So like, if you're coming in the arena as a guest, you need a ticket. But if you're coming in the back end, you still kind of have to check in, right? So they could,
but it's the performance center.
Yeah. Right,
so here's the thing. If it's the performance center, and it is, and you might be off TV, but it doesn't mean you can't work out. And this is
after this incident. If I were WWE, like if it was real, after this incident, the second time around, you're gonna have to go to 24-hour fitness. Like, like you're gonna need to go and get yourself a membership, because clearly we can't trust you with the access, with this access. Like that's the thing. So if we see this happen again, because there's no way HR, like this is an HR thing, right? And the fact that he's going public, and then talking to certain folks who I know who worked with WWE and have worked with WWE, they have a huge book of things that you can and cannot say or do or whatever. And this is going, like what he's saying on Twitter and social media, this is definitely going against the guidelines of what they're suggesting. So it's just kind of like, this has to. And if it's not, then like, this is the good and bad thing that I talked about at the beginning of the show, as far as having that pipeline, and now you're going directly to WWE. WWE has now created who you are, and like that, they could shut that off, because I'm willing to bet they have your passwords for your stuff, or they don't even need that. They can just call X. You know what I'm saying? So it's just kind of in a matter of a second, like your whole stuff could be right. Your whole stuff could be wiped. So
yeah, it's all very, very wild, and I'm intrigued to see where it's going to go, because it is one of those spaces where the line is so blurred that you don't really know. You don't really know, and for it to really work, Brooks Jensen has to be all in. Right. And he has been all in, to the point where I've been confused, and I know the guy, and I'm like, I don't know what's happening right now. That's a great thing. Yeah. That's a great thing. And so I think it's awesome. Again, we have to remember, Triple H, Shawn Michaels lived the Attitude Era. Their best friends created anarchy in WCW and the NW, and created the NWO. They know how to make this work in a way where you don't know what's going on. And that in itself is a massive, massive win. All right. So
speaking of massive win.
There's another pretty big win that's happening around these parts. We if you were with us on Monday on WWT Live, you have an idea of what's going on. But if you don't, and that's a possibility, we've got a brand new sponsor here at Women's Wrestling Talk, and I'm excited. Sponsorship is really important to do what we're doing, because all of what you see doesn't just happen. It requires money, it requires resources, it requires support. And so whenever a sponsor is willing and able to believe in the vision of what you're doing, that's a massive win. And for those of you who rock with us, you get how important that is. So I'm excited to announce that one of our newest sponsors coming on board are the good folks over at All Caribbean Wrestling. Very, very excited to have them on board. They are doing amazing things in the Caribbean when it comes to wrestling. And what I don't think most people understand is what's super cool about pro wrestling is not just watching it on TV, but it's when they get to come to your city, when they get to come to your town. And the one thing that All Caribbean Wrestling is able to do is bring pro wrestling into the faces and the communities of these spaces in the Caribbean, which is currently something that's not being done by any of the major promotions of the world. So it's really exciting to see what All Caribbean is doing. And they've got some really cool events that are on the way, one of which is coming up at the end of the month. It's called Baja Bash, and it's going to be very, very special. It's featuring some huge names like Mark Henry, Patrick Clark Jr. Also, you've got the All Caribbean Heavyweight Champion, the Pope, Elijah Burke. Lindsay Dorado will be there. Maserati will be there. Lots of amazing people. Baja Bash happening June the 29th in Nassau, Bahamas. So if you are not in the Bahamas, great time to come visit the Bahamas, check out some wrestling in the process, and you can get tickets for that right now at bajabash.eventbrite.com. Again, bajabash.eventbrite.com. Kudos to our friends over at All Caribbean Wrestling's brand new sponsors here at Women's Wrestling Talk. We love to see it. We absolutely love to see it. Now, while that's happening, go grab some merch, guys.
Hey, yo, you. Yeah, you that's watching this. You sitting on the couch staring at the screen not knowing what you want to do like this is an online college. Are you tired of wearing shirts that make you look like an extra stuck in catering? Do you want to step your wrestling swag game up to the next level? Then Women's Wrestling Talk has got you covered. Like literally. Are you for life in pink or black and white? Or maybe you're the EST and people need to respect you accordingly. Want to put some pride in your stride and show off the muscle in your hustle? Then make sure you check out the WWT store. Not now, but right now. Alright? What you waiting for? Head to www talkpodstore.com and don't make me fight you. Shit.
All right. It looks like Professor is checking on Little Professor, but that leads us to, I think it's going to be our last thing with Roxanne. And this was, man, the evolution of Rock. They need to do, if they already have it on YouTube or on the WWE channel or Peacock, I should say, the evolution of Roxanne Perez, like where she is now. It's kind of almost like watching a little sister like just grow, like from when she first started. And you definitely have to check out, we did interview with her before even ROH, Roxy. You definitely have to check that interview out, and then also check out our interview with Hyen, who also trained with her, and like how she's grown thus far. We're talking about Roxanne Perez, and her promo and the evolution of her. You are very correct, Jeffrey. Sassy Roxanne. It seems like she's coming to her own. And it's so funny when you see somebody turn heel, because I feel like it takes, not everybody can do it well. Right. And so I feel like when somebody turns heel, I'm like, so were you like this? Is this really who you are? Or are you just a good actor? Like, I don't know.
Particularly if they do it well.
Yeah. So, so let's talk about Roxanne, because I think that's the last thing, Roxanne, right?
Yes. So Roxanne Perez ends the show last night, and she ends the show with kind of this State of the Union address for the women's division. Lash Legend and Jakara Jackson, they would come out to address some of these issues. Also, we saw quite a few people. We saw Lola Vice come out. We saw missing a person or two. Who else came out? I can't remember who else came out. Some other people came out. But what was interesting to me was Lola Vice ended up kind of siding with Roxanne, in fighting and beating up the other people. What did you think of this as kind of the go home image of last night's show?
I mean, I love the. Well, I don't love the fact, but I love the fact that she has beef with Ava, which is interesting. Like she wants
Yes,
an
yes.
apology. That also speaks to, and I don't want to say this because I hate what it represents, but it also speaks to the younger generation, and I hate that I had to say that because now I feel older. But it also like you're like you you work for the company, and you're telling your boss that you need an apology from them. Like, where they do that at? Like, what? And the thing is, it's common now. That's the hilarious
It is
thing.
common now. It is common.
So just to have the audacity to say, yeah, like, you owe me an apology, not like, try to kind of go around and get them to do it on their own. It's like, nah, be very direct. Is like, oh, okay, it's good on you for that. So I love that because I feel like there's something playing out. And I'm also curious as far as Ava's concerned, what her storyline is going to be, because obviously GMs, they stay GMs for a certain period of time and then they move on to something else, or they move out of the company. I definitely don't think that's going to happen with her, given the ties, her family relations. But I'm curious as to if she's going to get back in the ring, or like how that's going to play out. But I think that's a ways away. But I'm with her and Roxanne, because that might be the in-ring, because it's not like I don't know if it's health reasons, but she could still go. That would be an interesting thing. But seeing how everybody else, coming out and saying like, you didn't build this. Eric is adding JC Jane.
Yeah, JC Jane and Jasmine Nix were the other two that were out there last night.
Yeah. And then seeing Lash and Jakara, I feel like now that you have the two titles, and I forgot what promotion I'm thinking of, but now that you have the two titles, well, I mean, most of the promotions, the men have two or more titles. Now that you have the two titles, now it feels actually, I'm lying. I'm thinking of AEW.
Yes.
Now that you have the two titles, it actually gives almost like two ladders to try to climb, which it makes it more interesting, and you can add more storylines to it. So I'm really curious, because eventually she's gonna have to. But I think when she does, she's going to the main roster, and she has to go to main roster as a heel.
Which she?
Roxanne.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely think Roxanne has a place already secured on the main roster. I don't even see that as an issue. She has somehow become the veteran when it comes to NXT, and it almost feels like it happened overnight. But she has definitely become the unquestionable leader of the NXT women's locker room. She still stands head and shoulders above the rest. And I will say, now, I often say that my favorite 2 hours of wrestling television is indeed NXT. I was actually a little surprised that this was the go home and the final image. And I guess I was surprised because having her do the state of the women's division address following their huge match over at Battleground, I really wondered, okay, is this going to be a space where we see, either somebody else from TNA show up, perhaps Jordan show up again, or someone in the main roster, seeing that you've now established that, okay, a champion from another organization couldn't beat her. It seems like she's mastered most of the women already in NXT. Who would now be the one to step up to her? So when JC Jane and Jasmine Nix came out, I was like, okay, this is a cool reintroduction for JC Jane, but surely this isn't how we're ending the show. And then when Lash and Jakara came out, I was like, okay, this is cool. Seeing Lash insert herself in the women's title picture, that's cool. But that can't be how we're ending the show. And then Lola Vice comes out, and I'm like, okay, this could be interesting. I mean, she just won, the underground.
Underground.
I could see that. But that's not how we're ending the show. And then they started fighting, and I was like, okay, so who is, and I guess that's my issue, is I never last night saw the figure that would appear to be the next one to challenge for the women's championship off the back of what we just saw Sunday night.
Right. I thought it was clear. I thought it was, because remember, this happened in TNA. I believe when Trinity was there with Mickie James. Mickie James helped Trinity, and then they both lifted up Trinity's title, and then Mickie James was looking at Trinity's title, and that led to them having a match. That's exactly what I saw with Lola. Lola helped. It was interesting.
I saw Lola help Roxanne, but as they were ending, I never saw Lola look at Roxanne again.
No, she was looking at her title.
Okay. Because I thought that they were both staring at whoever was outside of the ring. So that's interesting.
Yeah, okay. She was looking at it, but she was looking at it in such a way. And also kudos to Roxanne when she was doing her State of the Union, and even when the girls were coming out, like there has to be, and I know we have the Slammies and other things, but there has to be some category where it's like the wrestling Oscars or something, because the level of, because we know they know what's going to happen, not necessarily what everything that they're going to say, but like it's not real, right? Like it's scripted. So for Roxanne to play off of that, and to really, for me watching it again, knowing that they know but believing it, is an amazing skill to have. And they're doing it masterfully. That's why even with Lola, when she helped her, when she was looking at the championship, she was looking at it more of a side eye that Roxanne can't, because you're holding up the championship and we're both holding it and my head's this way. Now you're going to know I'm looking at the championship. But she did it in such a way where you can't really tell, because now Roxanne's fixated on the people in front of her. Lola's head kind of shifted, but her eyes went to the championship. Just beautiful. I mean, that's how I interpret it. Jeffrey in the chat said it looks like that's how he interpreted it too. That's what it looked like to me. And it looked like Lola is going to be the next in line, and might dethrone her. And then that's how, maybe the best of three or type situation. And that's how Roxanne goes off to the main roster. If she does, I mean, NXT is perfectly fine for her to stay and do all the things.
Yeah. This is going to be interesting to see how all of this plays out for sure. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm sure if the mayor is with us for WWT Live, he will have something to say about Lola potentially challenging for the championship. But needless to say, it was still another strong show. I think NXT is really cooking with hot grease. One of the things that we didn't mention that I know was mentioned in the chat was kind of this interesting AEW reunion that happened backstage with Cody Rhodes, Sean Spears, All Ego, Ethan Page, just kind of seeing them all together as friends of Cody Rhodes was all there, and Lexis King showing up as well. All former AEW employees. And it's interesting because Cody looked at them all and he goes, yeah, you guys are good. And I was just like, okay, wow, this is kind of neat. This again. And what I like about this is NXT has always been WWE's presentation for the smart fan, where they can say and do things without saying and doing them, and what's happening. Whether it was last week seeing Jordan Grace and Mi Chin have a moment backstage where they're both going, who would have thought we would have been here, obviously referencing their TNA connection.
Right.
And so I really like that about NXT, a very intelligent show, another strong show that they gave us this week, leading into what I think should be a very strong summer. Of course, Heat Wave is coming up in July, the night after Money in the Bank. And so I can imagine we're going to have a very, very fun road to Heat Wave. With that said, that's a look at our NXT post show. Of course, you can go back and watch NXT either on demand or it'll show up on Peacock today. If you have Peacock, you can check that out. There is like a 60-minute version that shows up on Hulu. But honestly, the way that NXT works, you can't afford to miss anything. So if I'm you, I'm checking it out when it hits Peacock later today so you can see the full episode. Definitely join us this afternoon for WWT Live, where we will talk all things pro wrestling. Lots of conversation to have based on all that's been going on in the last 48 hours. The future of Ricochet and all the things we'll get into, I'm sure, this afternoon. Meanwhile, you guys can reach me at Bonnerfied across all the spaces. I've got another fun content video coming out a little bit later today, talking about some of your favorite wrestling cities and which city could be kind of the new wrestling hub. We'll talk about that. So make sure you're following me at Bonnerfied on all of the spaces, and I'll give you all the other details later today. I hand it to the boss lady because this is her house. Or should I say the house that TK built? I think I like that.
Hilarious. Well, thank you, Professor. You guys can follow me everywhere at TK Trinidad. Make sure you check out Women's Wrestling Talk. We just dropped an interview with Kalia Capri, formerly of NXT. Now she's wrestling for All Caribbean Wrestling. Black Girl Wrestles, and Black BGW, I think. Black Girls Wrestling. And then there's another one that she's also in WoW. So you can just definitely check out that interview. Really interesting story. A lot of similarities as far as how we both came to America. So definitely check out that interview. It just dropped. And we have another interview happening with Black Swan next week that you can check out as well. So definitely check out WWT Live today. We're also going to have, today's Wednesday. So on Friday, we have our ROH TNA show. And then we're also having WWT Live. It looks like we may be having a post show for Clash of the Castle.
Oh,
yes.
How did we miss that? I'm sorry. The Wendy Chu situation. I don't know how we did not talk about.
Yeah, we did miss that.
We got to take just 60
Jeffrey.
seconds and talk. Thank you, Jeffrey, and talk about the return of Wendy Chu. Woo! What did you think, TK? Oh my God.
She reminded me of, I could see Su Yung.
Yes.
TNA.
Yes.
Very, very like on that level, but not as, I don't know what the word is. TNA can kind of go a little bit further in the
undead realm.
The undead realm and the alternate universes. They can go a little bit further because I guess the audience, and I love that stuff, especially when it was on Pop. I guess the audience kind of really kind of goes with it. When NXT, I think there's a certain, they can't go that far, but she did it perfectly where it's just there. If she goes any further, she might lose some folks, but it's just there. And now it's questioning like, well, how did you like, what you still sleeping? Like, what's happening here? So yeah, that was a really good match. And again, referencing, when we talk about stories and, how NXT kind of packages it together, what the through line of this is going to be and how this is going to end up and when did you like, it was crazy.
It was amazing.
It was amazing.
Thank you for the reminder, Jeffrey.
Thank you, Jeffrey. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. Till next time, guys. Ciao.
Out on bail, first out of jail, California dreaming. Soon as I step on the scene, I'm hearing hoochie screaming, feeding for money and alcohol.
Thanks for joining WWT. Don't forget to like us on all social media platforms at wwtalkpod. Like and subscribe on all video and audio platforms, like yesterday, my G. And check out our website at wwtalkpod.com. Thanks for watching Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1